This week, the RNC held its fall walkthrough for the media. Media members got a chance to sort of go through the Spectrum Center where the convention is going to be held next August. For the convention, the floor of the Spectrum Center is actually going to be raised 10 feet to create new floor for the delegates. Organizers say it's still too early to say where the security perimeter will be around Uptown, like it was for the DNC, say. There's going to be about 50 to 60,000 people here during the time, spending about $200 million, it's estimated. Joel, this was a controversial issue for your fellow Democrats on City Council. Let me go ahead and get your opinion on it.
Yeah, very controversial, especially when you consider that no other city in America wanted to host this thing, but our local elected officials, led by our mayor, stepped up to the plate and provided the Republicans with a convention here in the city of Charlotte. I will say that tongue-in-cheek, but I do believe that our city will be safe. There are a lot of concerns that my fellow Democrats have raised about the safety of this convention. I have the utmost confidence in our local law enforcement to be able to handle this particular issue. And so I do believe that we will have a security plan in place to make sure that the conventioners who come and visit out of town, in addition to those who live here, will be safe.
Dan, the political climate, he referred to it, we talk about it almost all the time here. Are you worried about the tone that could end up, and you could say the same thing for the DNC as well, but we're hosting the RNC, so I'll ask you that. The tone that some of the speeches and some of the parts of the convention could take?
I'm not. I think an extraordinary effort is being put together right now, as Joel mentioned, both with security and the planning of this, to make sure that both the city of Charlotte is hospitable and the guests understand what our expectations are. I'm very excited about it. I think it's going to be a huge opportunity for Charlotte to show off on a world stage again. And we'll be nominating the next president of the United States.
There you go.
Well, I think it's real quick. I just say, if you take a look at all the hostility among young people on college campuses as it relates to this hyper-partisanship, I can't help but to be concerned. And I'm prayerful that this will not spill over in this environment, because ultimately different people have the express right and ability to express their political views without being harassed or without having to get into the physical confrontation.
I just think it's a new time right now than we were at 3 or 4 years ago. And either convention, the rhetoric has become so heated, and we've seen rallies happen over the last year or two that have become unfortunate, some would say, or some of the tone, at least in them, is unfortunate. I think most people would agree. We're hoping that doesn't happen here. This week, the Democratic presidential field grew once again. Former Massachusetts Governor Deval Patrick making a late entry into the race. Patrick made a history as the first black governor of Massachusetts and has pretty close ties to former President Barack Obama and his network of advisors. However, it's got to be said, he faces significant fundraising and organizational hurdles less than 3 months before the voting begins. And he's not alone. Michael Bloomberg also taking another step forward, potentially being a Democratic presidential candidate. The former New York City mayor filed paperwork at the Arkansas Capitol to be included on the state's primary ballot. He then headed out for what would be considered a campaign stop, having a on-camera lunch with Little Rock's mayor. Nothing like a lunch that's on camera, right? It's very, very intimate. A spokesperson has laid out what would be an unorthodox strategy that he would run. He'd skip the 4 traditional early voting states of Iowa, New Hampshire, Nevada, and South Carolina. He would instead focus on Super Tuesday, when a bunch of states are running. Speaking of 2020, Hillary Clinton has said many people are urging her to consider running for president. She said that this week to the BBC. She did not say who's been pressuring her or any specifics, but she says she has no plans to kick off a campaign, even though the thought of the presidency has not been far from her mind since she lost in 2016. She said, quote, "I think all the time about what kind of president I would have been and what I would have done differently." But again, she's saying many, many people are asking her to do it.
I think she needs to let it go and move on, and I think that the country would appreciate that. But it's interesting, though, for the Democratic presidential field, that is still not settled, right? And so if you take a look at the fact, well, I think if you take a look at Vice President Joe Biden, he's looking old and slow. Yeah. If you take a look at Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders, that is an extreme of our party, right? Free everything, free health care, free college. We're just going to give it away. But ultimately, and I think the average American knows, somebody's going to have to pay for it. So here's an opportunity. There's a small window here for Bloomberg and for Patrick Deval to be able to get into this race. And by the way, I'm a huge fan of Patrick Deval, a successful governor from Massachusetts, very articulate, smart. And if anybody has the ability to raise the money, it would be him. But let me say this to you. It's going to be tight. So what is his ultimate goal in getting the race in at this time? Is he positioning himself for a vice presidency or a cabinet position? But it goes to show you that the fact that the Democrats are not settled.
It reminds me of 2016 on the Republican side.
100%.
An open opportunity. Everybody that's taking a look at it wants to stick their toe in the water and see what it's like. It'll settle very quickly. I agree with Joel. Everybody wants everything for free. Folks are going to get ultimately pushed out of the way, I think, to some more pragmatic people on the Democratic Party side that can confront Donald Trump from their perspective and run head-to-head. The Bloomberg-Duvall entries are very, very interesting to me, particularly Bloomberg, self-funder.
Yeah.
Right. So
all the money in the world.
Yeah. So here you got two self-funders that could go at it. I think, like Joel said, Hillary has had her day in the sunshine. I think the Democratic Party, and I know our party and most of the country would be glad if she would just enjoy her retirement.
All right. More Flashpoint after this.